We are now live on Facebook for the Jim Renacci Facebook Live Town Hall tonight. Looking forward to speaking with everyone and answering everyone's questions. We've got Jim, so we'll just go right to Jim and remind everyone that Election Day is May 3rd. So we are rapidly approaching and looking forward to answering everyone's questions down the final stretch.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being on tonight. I want tonight to be really open for questions and answers. We are down to the last week. Many of you know who I am already. I'll touch a little bit on that, but I really want to spend as much time in the hour answering questions. Who Jim Renacci is, I got to tell you, I have to chuckle. I got a Facebook post today that said, I saw it, it said, Jim Renacci is a billionaire who's been in politics for 40 years. Well, let me explain that. If I was a billionaire and I was in politics for 40 years, I wouldn't be running for governor. I'd probably be about 80 years old right now. So it just shows you how sometimes the comments that are made are just not true. Jim Renacci is a guy who moved to Ohio 39 years ago, started his first business with just a couple $100, went from one business to 60 businesses, created over 1,500 jobs, and employed over 3,000 people. I was happy being a businessman. I created jobs. I had fun. I actually had everything from a CPA firm to a construction company, golf courses, car dealerships, Harley dealerships, amphitheaters, bars and restaurants. That was really what I enjoyed doing. But as many people know, sometimes the infringement of government really does cause you to change the direction of your life. And in 2009, after General Motors was taken over by the Obama administration, I was told that my Chevy dealership was no longer going to allow to stay open. Now, I got to tell you, I was totally shocked because I had a Chevy dealership that I had just signed an agreement with General Motors to build a brand new location out on the highway. I'd invested $3 million. I was anticipating building a big showroom out on the highway. And it was something I planned on giving to my children and grandchildren someday, only to have it yanked by the federal government. And that's really what made me step up and say, we need to change things. And that's what I did. I ran for office, beat an incumbent Democrat. I will also tell you the funny thing, people called me establishment. Nobody even knew who I was. 2 years later, the establishment redistricted, which was 10 years ago. They redistricted my district, made it tougher for me to win. So I chuckle because if I was the establishment, they wouldn't have done that to me, but that was okay. I won that second election. And then I ended up serving 2 more terms. After 6 years, I realized that Washington was so broken. And the only way we're going to fix it is back in Ohio. And many of you probably know I jumped into the governor's race. I still believe I would have defeated Mike DeWine in 2017, but I got a call from the President of the United States asking me to get into the Senate race. I did. And, I don't regret many things in life. Looking back though, jumping into a Senate race where the guy already has $25 million in a bank and you're starting out with zero, I probably should have regretted that decision. But I will tell you, after 5 months of hard work, we raised and spent $4 million. My opponent raised and spent $33.5 million to keep that seat. He outspent me 8-1. He said a lot of lies which aren't true, which you can do in politics. And he defeated me by only a net 150,000 votes out of 4.4 million. So I was actually proud of that race, even though we weren't successful. But I got back into the business world, started watching Governor DeWine, and in 2019, started fighting many of his policies when he was raising the gas tax or whether he was trying to bring refugees in. I was fighting him. He was not changing our policies. He was not reducing spending. He was not changing our tax code, all the things that I knew had to be done. And then finally COVID hit, as we all know, and he went one step further. He started taking away our rights and many of our values and principles. And that was the real ending point for me. And the first energy scandal, which put us, we are now the state ranked #1 in corruption. And yet we have a governor who's got that corruption wrapped all around himself with employees that had to step down. So that's the reason I'm running. I think, and I knew in 2017 that I could actually take this state to a different direction, a businessman's direction, a business person, somebody who has lived with the rules. And I'm so proud of what Ohio has done for me that I jumped in this race. And again, we are doing well, but we got 5-6 days left. Next Tuesday is the election. I need your vote. And that's why I thought tonight, instead of being on the road, Joe Knopp's actually out there tonight. I thought I would come back, do a Facebook Live and answer some questions for you, because, you know, if there are some more questions, I want you to have them answered between now and next week so that I can earn your vote. So let's get started and answer some questions.
Awesome. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to comment them on the Facebook video, and we will definitely try to get to them. And we also had some questions pre-submitted via email before, so we'll start with a couple of those. And Jason asks, what will you do about the federal overreach of the government, and what will you do to defend our 2A rights?
Well, I will tell you, anybody that is concerned about their 2A rights should be. We got a president and President Biden who wants to get control of our guns. And we got a governor in Mike DeWine who, no matter what anybody says, he was F-rated by the NRA when he was in Congress. He actually got endorsed by the NRA. I don't know how many people heard that. What a joke. How do you get endorsed by the NRA when you had an F rating when you were in Congress? But he did get endorsed by the NRA. It's just amazing. We need to have a governor who's going to protect our Second Amendment rights. We have to have a governor who just doesn't talk about it. We have to have a governor like me who wears a gun every day and will continue to wear a gun even when I'm governor. We have to have a governor who just doesn't talk, but acts. This governor, actually in 2019, if you remember, he actually tried to pass some of the most anti-gun regulations out there, the red flag laws. And when he couldn't get the House and Senate to go along with him, he tried to put it in the budget in 2020. We don't need that. We need to keep the overreach of the federal government away from us. I want to make Ohio at some point in time, my goal is to be a sanctuary free of all federal government overreach, not only Second Amendment, but all of them. But I will tell you, as a governor who carries a gun, I will protect your Second Amendment rights.
Fantastic. And we'll get right into it with Russ. Russ asked, what is the real story on why there was no debate between you and Mike DeWine?
Well, that's interesting, because I would always have loved to have a debate with Mike DeWine. And if anybody tunes into the cleveland.com editorial board, that was my one and only chance. And it was interesting. There were 2 times that it was scheduled. Both times Mike DeWine got sick and couldn't make it. So then they scheduled it again for this week. I told them I was sick because I figured Mike DeWine would show up. And quite frankly, he did, and so did I. And we had a good debate forum where I put him on the spot multiple times. He could not answer the questions. And I truly believe that's the reason why he did not want to debate. Now, I go back to the Ohio Debate Commission. They wanted to have a live debate. They wanted to have it in front of an audience. Mike DeWine said he didn't want to do it. He thought it was wasting an hour of his time. He didn't want to have the booing and bickering in the background. So one of the and at that point we had said we're willing to debate. We're all in. But then Mike DeWine came back and said he was not going to debate. So what I was doing was negotiating with Ohio's Elections Commission and saying, look, if Mike DeWine doesn't debate, it's really not a governor's debate. So let's get him on stage. But if he's so concerned about a crowd and he's so concerned about booing and hissing, let's have it just be on stage with the candidates and nobody else. And they actually said they would consider that. They wanted to talk to the DeWine camp, so forth and so on. They came back the next day and said there was no interest in doing that. I asked them at that point in time, has anybody else committed? And their answer was no one else had committed. The one campaign had not said they wouldn't come, but they didn't say they would come. And I said, well, again, a debate without Mike DeWine is no debate. And that's where it ended. I would love to have had a debate. I would love to have a debate with all the candidates. I think the people need to see how the reactions of not only Mike DeWine would have been, but the other candidates as well. Some of the other candidates just have no vision, no plan. They just talk, they're mad, they argue and complain, but they don't have a vision. I've had a vision now since 2019. I came up with a plan for Ohio, which included consumption tax, eliminating spending. All of this stuff was determined in my Ohio Future Foundation 501c4 while we were working through Ohio in 2019 and 2020. And that's where we came up with our vision, which is still our vision today.
Fantastic. And we'll get into the next question, which is a topic that I know is on everyone's mind right now, and that's inflation. And Dario asks, Jim, what will your plan be to lower inflation rates in Ohio?
Well, look, inflation is a difficult thing to answer as a governor, because one of the reasons we have inflation is the federal government is spending so much money. And the more they spend and the more, remember, they gave Governor DeWine almost 12 or 14 billion dollars. So Governor DeWine's, and that's why he's spending so much. He has all this money. All this spending is going to come to an end at some point in time. But while you're spending all this money, you're causing inflation to grow. And that's a serious, serious problem. So number one, we have to be able to get the federal government under control. And that's what a strong governor would want to do. And if we can get 38 strong governors in a convention of states format, we can tell the federal government we want them to balance their budget and we want term limits. And that's the best way of stopping this free-for-all of cash. In the meantime, how do we help hardworking Ohioans? It's pretty simple. I've already said that I would support a reduction of the gas tax. I would replace it though. I'm not looking to cut those expenditures. We're getting all this federal money. Instead of spending it for Vax a Million and all the other garbage that this governor has spent it on, let's earmark it right to the taxpayers. Let's give the taxpayers a break on their gas tax, which will help them in the inflationary times. But at the same time, let's take some of that federal money and put it back where the gas tax was being used, so that nothing actually, nothing slows down when it comes to spending and roads and bridges and all the things that the gas tax money is used for.
Absolutely. And along those lines, Stephen Walker asked, are there any state-run programs that you would end?
Well, look, as a businessman, I'm going to look at every single plan we have, evaluate the return on the dollars being spent, and anything that does not have a return needs to be eliminated. I'm also going to look at privatizing a lot of things. I mean, look, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's just do what some of the other states are. Why are we like one of only 5 or 6 states that still runs our prison systems and all the other prison systems are private? I'm not saying we're going to do that, but I think we need to look at it. Why is our workers' compensation system one of the few states that runs it by the state of Ohio versus privatizing it? I'm not saying we're going to change that, but it does need to be looked at. All of these things need to be looked at because we should, again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Let's just look at what other states are doing and see what works.
Absolutely. And over to education, Deb is asking, would you tell us your objectives and plans regarding academic excellence and the whole child agenda, which involves, critical race theory, social emotional learning, comprehensive sexual education, and all of those other woke, propaganda?
Sure. Well, number one, our education system should always be based on educating a child so they can live the American dream. That should be the starting point. How does a child that starts out in first grade get the education all the way through K through 12 that he or she can live the American dream? That's got to be important. Here in Ohio as well. The answer to that is, what are the jobs of the future? What are the employment opportunities of the future? But also, what are the opportunities for that child? And I think education should be based on, I think if we can educate everyone so they can leave either K through 12 or even higher education, and they can live the American dream, that should be the number one priority. Doing that means that sometime in their college years, we got to start giving them more opportunities to look at opportunities where they can go. It could be college, it could be the military. I mean, think about that. That's something we don't talk enough about. It could be the military, could be college, or it could even be a trade school. And I think we should then have the dollars flow wherever that child, young adult wants to go to, the dollars should flow. And it shouldn't be this fight between the superintendent at the school district and the career tech fighting over, why don't you have so much money? The money should always flow to where the child wants to go. I think that's important too. Excellence comes by making sure that those that are educated can leave the education system with a skill set to live the American dream. Now, when it comes to the woke agenda, look, I've said that number one. Day one, I'm going to ask the House and Senate to get me a bill that I will sign that eliminates critical race theory, that eliminates social emotional learning, that eliminates comprehensive sex education. Think about that. Why are we teaching sex education to kindergarten through third grade, even fourth, fifth, or sixth grade? I mean, it's just amazing that we even think about that. I want that eliminated. I want our education system to be more parent driven, which it should be. But at the same time, I also want our education system, and I would sign House Bill 61, which basically also says that biological men can only compete in biological men's sports to protect our women's sports and our women's athletes. This is another thing this governor has failed on. I was just on this, as I call it, it was an endorsement interview, and he said, well, I don't support CRT and I don't support social emotional learning, comprehensive sex education. Of course, but he doesn't say it. He doesn't come out publicly. I said to him there, why don't you talk about it? As a leader, you say, I want a bill on my desk, or I am not going to allow this to occur in my state. But this governor doesn't do that. That's the problem. Governor Jim Renacci will do that.
100%. And, Angela is asking, because there's been a lot of information sort of spread out throughout this election cycle. And she wants to know, is it true that you do not vote constitutional conservative principles?
Yeah, it's interesting. The definition of constitutional conservative principles are extremely interesting. The answer is I always support constitutional conservative principles. Now, everybody will say, well, I don't agree with that vote, or I don't agree with this vote. Well, in the end, the Constitution, in many ways, I'll give you an example. There was a vote, I get criticized for this. There was a vote to impeach the tax commissioner. And it came to the House floor and I voted against it. And somebody said, that's terrible. You didn't vote constitutionally conservative. And my answer was, look, we didn't even give the tax commissioner the ability to have a hearing. If you're going to impeach someone, the rules are simple. The Constitution gives the person who's going to be impeached the ability to have a hearing. When they were trying to impeach Donald Trump, the conservative Republicans said, shame on them. They did not give Donald Trump an opportunity for a hearing. I agree. But constitutionally, you got to give the tax commissioner an opportunity for a hearing as well. That was not granted. So again, I heard somebody say at one point in time, well, Jim's not constitutionally conservative because he didn't vote to impeach the tax commissioner. Well, there's my answer. If you do believe in constitutional conservatism, you don't impeach anybody without giving them the constitutional rights of a full hearing.
Awesome. And while we're dispersing all this information, Trey Frazee, he asked that you mentioned the first energy scandal with DeWine, but why did you advocate for the passage of House Bill 6 in 2019?
Well, look, I think House Bill 6, I think anytime you can protect an all of the above energy source and you can eliminate something that John Husted pushed many, many years ago, which is basically a tax levied to push for solar and wind energy. When you pay your electric bill, you are paying an extra fee that actually promotes wind and solar energy in the state of Ohio. I wanted to eliminate that. That was in House Bill 6. I don't think we should be supporting any of that. I think all of the above energy should be a goal of every state, but I don't think the government should be picking winners and losers. They were picking wind and solar and currently are. We still are, which is not right. But the other time, I do think that we do need to make sure we protect our energy grid. Right now, if we lose our solar, if we lose our nuclear energy base and our coal and our, I mean, let's think so far. I don't know if people realize we used to export energy. Ohio is now an import state again because we are losing our energy. So we need to be energy independent. And I did support a bill that would have allowed for taking away those dollars that were being pushed to solar, wind, and other non-carbon energy issues, and then scaling it so that the nuclear energy would also be in the game and have the opportunity to be looked at. We have a tremendous amount of assets in nuclear energy in Ohio, and we need to make sure that those jobs and that energy source is protected. And all these years, especially when you go back to the years when the nuclear power plants were deregulated, they were deregulated. But then the federal government came in and said, by the way, even though you're deregulated, an entity called FERC said you can only charge so much. And that's really hurt our nuclear energy. So in the end, I think it was a good bill, but I don't think it was done right. I don't think it was done proper. I don't think there should have been bribery involved to get it passed. I don't think there should have been money used to get it passed. I think bills should pass on the merits of the bill. And I think that bill, the merits actually were very strong if they were just spelled out. The sad thing was they used money to get it passed, and that's the problem.
Absolutely. And Deborah Powell wants to know if you would govern Ohio the same way that Governor Ron DeSantis is governing Florida right now.
You know, I was just asked that question today, and I would tell you I'll run it better than Ron DeSantis. I mean, I love Governor DeSantis and what he's doing in Florida. I served with Governor DeSantis. By the way, a side note, I always hear people say, you're a career politician. Yet I served less than Governor DeSantis, less than Governor Nome, less than Jim Jordan. I mean, my service has been 8 years, only 4 more years than President Trump. But people say, I would support Governor DeSantis being governor of Ohio. Well, if I'm a career politician, you could double that for Governor DeSantis. He's actually served double the amount of years I have, but he's still a good governor. And I would make Ohio, I would try and make Ohio better than Florida. I want Ohio to be the #1 state. I want Florida to be competing with us to be the #1 state.
Good answer. And with Mr. Hughes is asking a question about immigration and refugee status. And he'd like to know, what would you do about the extreme influx of Somali and other countries into cities like Columbus and other sanctuary cities? And would you do anything as governor to combat sanctuary cities in Ohio?
Well, #1, I would want our state to be a sanctuary city free of illegal immigrants. So the reverse. And I would want to look at the cities. We have 5 cities that are sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. I want that to be against the policy, and it is against our actual state policy. And I would say that we want to do whatever we can to defund those cities if they're going to continue to harbor illegal immigrants. When it comes to refugees, we shouldn't bring anybody into Ohio until we take care of our homeless veterans. I've been saying that for years. I not only talk the talk, I walk the walk. I've been supporting homeless veterans for the last 10 years. I've actually supported 5 facilities in Stark County that support homeless veterans. That's got to be the key. And it's not something the government has to get involved in, but it's something the government has to help and assist in. Because I can show you 5 facilities that take veterans funding, not state funding, but are providing care and helping veterans get off the street. That's got to be a key. The thing we need to do in Ohio is prioritize. And I can tell you, homeless veterans will be prioritized ahead of refugees and ahead of illegal immigrants for sure. And one thing I will tell you, I say this on the campaign trail all the time. If a plane lands with illegal immigrants, they're going to have enough time to refuel and then get out of here. And I'm going to send them either to Delaware, where President Biden is, or to DC and land there and let them take care of them.
Absolutely. And Alicia Marie wants to know, what's your plan for the people who cannot access home care? And how will you invest in home care workforce to ensure Ohio families can be lifted out of poverty while getting care for their disabled loved ones?
Yeah, well, look, the Medicaid program is important. And I've said that Medicaid should be always used as a safety net. It should take care of our elderly. It should take care of our disabled. It should take care of our children. The problem we have is today we have something called, the extra Medicaid that was passed, a Medicaid expansion that was passed by Governor Kasich. Our Medicaid budget has swelled from 17% of our spending under Governor Strickland. Now think about that. That was 10, 12 years ago. We were at 17% of our budget, and today Medicaid is 52% of our budget. So we can't continue to survive with a budget that swelled to where 52% of our spending is Medicaid. We have to get that down. In fact, we cannot fix our tax code in Ohio until we get our spending down. Today, we spend the same amount. We spend $80 billion, our budget, for 10.7 million people, and Florida is $88 billion for 22 million people. Those are statistics I've been talking about since 2019. I've been traveling the state talking about our spending habit and how we spend too much, we tax too much, and my goal would be to get our spending down. So when it comes to Medicaid, I will always want to use those Medicaid dollars to protect those that are part of the safety net, including home care, reimbursement. But I do think we need to eliminate those that can work and provide for themselves, but are now on the Medicaid dole as well. We have to make sure there's a right to work. You have to be able to work. Have to be able to look for work, I should say. You can't just continue to accept the Medicaid dollars. We just can't afford it. Our budget's going to expand, and to a point, it'll be unaffordable. So I do think we got to make sure we protect our elderly and those that are in need, but at the same time, we got to make sure we get our spending priorities in order as well.
Great. And Angela emailed in a question, and she would like you to clearly define where you stand on mask and vaccine mandates. And do you and will you support any future mandates? And I guess an additional aside, your stance on the masking of children in schools.
That's pretty simple. I do not support mandating a mask or a vaccination on anyone. I do not believe it. It should be an individual choice. We should not have government mandating that. When it comes to children in school, that should be a decision between the parent and the pediatrician and the child. It should not be the school or the government. So I can tell you that Governor Jim Renacci, will not impose illegal mask mandates or illegal vaccination requirements or requiring masking of children in school. In fact, I'll go the opposite, that I will go make sure that I sign executive orders or whatever to defund some of these schools that continue to mask our children for 8 hours. That's child abuse, absolute child abuse.
Absolutely. And along those lines of medical and COVID, Chrissy Marie commented on Facebook, and she'd like to know, what will you do to mandate pharmacists to fill legal prescriptions written by a physician for their patients, regardless of the medication, which she's specifically, of course, referring to ivermectin.
Ivermectin, sure. Look, this is so amazing that this even happens. I would actually do what DeSantis has done. I would help make sure that those drugs are available. But at the same time, you should be able to get, the role of government is, the role of government is to make sure that our freedoms are protected. But at the same time, if there are drugs available, we should be able to make sure that Ohio has them available too. If a physician wants to administer a drug and the patient wants that drug, they should be able to get it. It's that simple. It should not be that difficult, and the government should not be in the middle of it at all.
Great. And Thad, he has a question more focused on our workforce. And he says, Mr. Renacci, in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be a massive trade job surplus in Ohio and not enough workers to fill them. In my field, they expect 30 to 50,000 welding jobs to be unfilled under the path DeWine has on us. How will you fix this? And this question was emailed in.
Sure. Well, here's what's even worse. In the next 10 years, we're going to have the least amount of 18-year-olds ever in the history of Ohio. So that means that we're going to have less people to fill those jobs as well. I think in the end, what we have to really do is we have to make sure that we are training for the jobs that are open in Ohio. If Governor Jim Renacci has the opportunity to do a 10-year plan, it's going to be to look out and see what are the jobs of the future. And then when you talk about educational excellence, we should make sure that our children and our young adults get educated to fill those jobs. I mean, that's really how you make a state the powerhouse it needs to be. We should be developing an educational program so that we're filling the jobs of the future. And if that means that we're telling our high school students in 11th grade that, look, you can make $100,000 a year in a welding program, or you can go to college, you'll come out and make $35,000. These are your choices. Let's give them their choices. Look, having a welding profession, making 110, 100,000 a year is a way of living the American dream. You can start out as a welder, you can own your own welding plant after a while. So I think those are the things that are important. And it's about making sure that we look to the future. Politicians too often, Governor DeWine, when he took office, about a year ago, he started worrying about his next election. He's forgotten about the next generation. I would promise you this, Jim Renacci will never forget about the next generation, even if I lose an election, because I'm thinking about the next generation. That's okay. That's okay. I want to make sure that we have a long-term plan that can be developed and carried out to make sure those jobs of the future are filled.
Absolutely. And along those lines of workforce shortages, Christine Hartzell commented on Facebook, and she'd like to know, do you have a view on the nursing home shortage or the nursing shortage? It's going to get worse, she says, as thousands have left and many more are leaving. She says that she's been an RN for 27 years and that the morale in her office is horrible right now.
Well, it's interesting. Look, I was in the healthcare business, and I go back in the 1990s. We couldn't get nurses. We couldn't get nursing aides. It was horrendous. We could not fill and keep up the facilities. People didn't want to get involved. We had problems. We actually went out and did legal immigration processes to bring people in from other countries. That's how bad the shortage got. I think in the end, what we have to do is we have to make sure individuals learn very early that a career in nursing is a great career. The problem is my mother was a nurse, my sister was a nurse, my aunts were nurses. I have so many people in the healthcare field, but it's a different field today. It's like a machine. The problem is our government has made healthcare a machine, not a healthcare. And I think in the end, we got to make sure that we get back to a standard of care. And a lot of that's federal, not something a governor can do. But a lot of these are federal standards for Medicaid and Medicare, especially on how patients have to be documented and treated. It's sad. It really is sad. And sometimes it's just about how can I get that extra dollar to get Medicare reimbursement, because the hospitals are having troubles as well. So I think in the end, the best way to make change there is to make sure that we really teach our young adults how a career in healthcare is just as important as any of the other careers as well. And I think mentoring, look, I want to be a governor who starts mentoring programs. I do believe that our high school students need to have some time in real life opportunities to make some decisions. It gives them a better idea of what they may want to do. Maybe mentoring in a hospital, mentoring in a welding factory, mentoring in places where they can see, hey, here's the opportunities and here's what I can make. I think that will not only keep our high school young adults here and even our college professionals here, because if they have a connection, a mentoring connection, they'll end up staying.
Awesome. And Robert has a good question on the issue of taxes. And he would like to know, will Governor Jim Renacci be lowering gas taxes as well as taxes for the seniors?
Well, I'll tell you what a Governor Renacci will do. First, we got to get spending down. Hard to lower taxes when your spending's going up. Just like in everyday life, if your household expenses are going up and you don't have the income to cover it, you have to cut your household expenses. The problem with this Ohio government is it's been on a unleashed train of higher and higher and higher spending. Again, we just went from 76 billion to 80 billion in this past budget. This governor will say he cut spending, but isn't it amazing? Maybe he needs to go back and realize that 76 to 80 is a $4 billion increase, not a cut in spending. But he says it's a cut in spending. It's the funny math that career politicians learn how to use. But here's what I think we need to do. We need to get our spending in line. There are so many wasted programs, billions of dollars lost in unemployment, billions of dollars lost in Medicaid. We, under this administration, by the way, recorded billions of dollars of lost unemployment, fraud, and Medicaid fraud. These are areas we can cut, but there's other places we can cut. There's other things we can prioritize. Then once we do that, we can start looking at ways to make Ohio that great place to live. We have to change our tax code. We have to change the way we tax people. And I do believe, and I've put this out, that I want to come up with a plan for seniors over 65 that have lived in their house for a period of time. I mean, and I'll have to work this out with the legislature, whether it's 25 years or 30 years or whatever it is. After a certain period of time, if you've lived in that same house all those years, you can get a credit and an elimination of your real estate taxes. I would like to do that, especially, and you got to look at their revenue side too. Many of our seniors are living just on Social Security and maybe a small pension, and yet their real estate taxes under this administration have climbed almost 400%. They can't afford to live in their house. We got to give them a break. I'm going to work very hard with the House and Senate to come up with a plan where they do get a break.
Absolutely. And Angela Cruzen-Schrook, she commented on Facebook, are you going to stop businesses from requiring mandates? HB 248 would have stopped it, but it died because of DeWine. And I'm sure, that's a very common theme that would be different with you. Sure.
Well, let's face it. One of the reasons why we need House Bill 248 is because what we have today is a law that says businesses can come up with their employment, their standards of employment, as long as they don't discriminate for health, for religious, and for ADA discrimination. So I want to protect those exemptions today. We need to protect those exemptions. We need to make sure that you can get a health exemption. We need to make sure you can get a religious exemption. And we need to make sure that nobody can discriminate against you for, ADA disabilities. And that's the problem we have. It's anybody who doesn't fit in those exemptions. Today, a business can't say, well, I want you to be vaccinated. That's why we need House Bill 248. I mean, people get confused and they say, well, Jim Renacci supports, vaccinating in businesses and he supports business. No, that's not true. Personally, I don't believe in it. And in my heart, I don't believe in it. But the law allows for it. And what we need to do is change the law. That's why House Bill 248 or something similar to 248 is important. So I would ask for a bill like 248 to be on my desk that I could sign as well.
Fantastic. And Ralph Copley, He wants to know what you would do to help police departments recruit and retain police officers.
Well, look, we need to strengthen our, I say this all the time. I can't even imagine why people talk about defunding the police. How crazy is that? We need to fund our police. I mean, and to be honest, that's a city job. So the cities need to be able to make sure they fund the police. But the state government needs to be able to make sure they support where they can the police departments, whether it's in training dollars or other dollars. But at the same time, we always have to work the state. We should have state programs that get behind our police and our firefighters and all our first responders as well. We got to make sure that there are programs to help our first responders. They're the first line of defense. They're the ones people call when they're in an emergency, their house is burning or they're being robbed. They're calling. We got to make sure we protect those. You can look at my history. I've always protected first responders. In fact, I'll tell you all an interesting little story. On the Ways and Means Committee, they were going to change a bill a couple of years ago, and it was going to hurt our police and fire departments. Now, in Washington, the way things work is leadership would push this bill down and they'd say, we want your Ways and Means Committee to pass it out of Ways and Means and bring it to the floor. Well, this bill was not good for police or firefighters. So when it, and we were the Republican majority, believe it or not, and yet the Republican chairman was pushing this bill. So I went to him and I said, Chairman, I'm not going to support that bill. And he said, well, you're on Ways and Means, you have to support it. And I go, no, I'm not supporting it. I said, I am not going to support something that hurts our firemen and our police officers. And I'll never forget, the next day before the bill came to the floor of the committee, one of the, he was actually a police officer in Washington State. He was on Ways and Means. He came up to me and said, you know, they're telling us we have to support that bill, but I heard you're not going to support it. And I go, nope, not going to support it. It hurts firefighters and it hurts police. And he said, I'm not going to support it either. He goes, but we were being told we had to. He goes, so I appreciate you stepping up for police and firefighters. And then the next thing I know, there needed to be 4 no's to kill the bill. Next thing you know, I had another call from one of the members on the Republican side saying, Renacci, I heard you're not supporting it. Nope, not going to support it. I'm not going to support anything that doesn't support our police and firefighters. Long story short, 4 members of the Ways and Means Committee all said, we're not voting for this. But I'm proud that I was one that said, started the train going down the track by saying, I'm not going to support it. So we need to do that. We also need to help our police, especially, get back out in the communities and be seen as part of the community, not seen as somebody who's going to just arrest you. So there's a lot of things we can do. If I can tell you as governor, if riots ever broke out while I was governor, I'm not going to sit around and say, hey, that's a right to have riots. Nope. No, I'm going to send the National Guard in. We're not going to allow rioters and looters busting up windows in Cleveland and doing things to our Capitol building. I'm going to send the National Guard in. And there's another thing I want to do when it comes to safety in our, remember, we have 5 of the 50 most dangerous cities in the country. I do also believe in the castle doctrine. You should be able to protect your home. I want to ask the House and Senate to get me a castle doctrine for your business. You should be able to protect your business as well, just like you protect your home. These are all the things I want to do in conjunction with our police to make sure we have safe cities, safe communities, and a safe Ohio.
Absolutely. Very important to support our police. And Tracy emailed a question prior, and she'd like to know, Kasich and DeWine broke their campaign promises to find another way to support Ohio schools other than through property taxes. Can you find a fair way to support Ohio schools? Can you then have the state issue the funds to follow the student and not go to school unions, thus allowing school choice for every Ohio family?
Yeah, well, I've already said that I'm going to ask the state legislature. I really want a simple bill. You can call it all. You can call it backpack. I just want a simple bill. I don't care if we call it follow the child. The money follows the child wherever they want to go. That should be the bill that I get on my desk. Kasich and DeWine never really finished the goal of making sure that our funding of schools was constitutional. There are some people that believe it is today. I can only promise that I will, and I'm not sure what would meet the constitutional guidelines. But one thing I will promise taxpayers is that is on my list to make sure we make school funding constitutional and something that works for all students and all school districts across the state.
Absolutely. And Amanda also emailed in a question, and she'd like to know what's being done to ensure the vote isn't split, which gives DeWine the seat. And then she explained that we need DeWine out.
Well, there's a lot of people that believe we need DeWine out, me included. That's why I'm running. Look, I got into this race early on. There was another individual in the race. I evaluated, his capabilities and realized he could never win. He didn't have the money. He didn't have the background. He didn't have the experience. And his background, even his personal background, had some very questionable things that would lead you to wonder whether he could oversee an $80 billion budget. So I jumped into the race at that time, realizing that this individual couldn't win. Now, I give him credit. He was in for the same reasons. He wanted to get rid of DeWine. There was some discussion in the beginning as to, we're going to split the vote. There was even some talk about, hey, when we get close enough, the person who's got the most votes should get out. And, look, the most recent poll shows I have the most votes. He'll try and pull out one poll out of 30 that says he has the most votes. But the truth of it is, if you take all the polls, and especially the polling going on right now, we're surging. DeWine is declining in that most recent Fox poll, although we have some internals that show that we're at a dead heat right now. In fact, our internals show that DeWine and Renacci are at a dead heat. The other candidate is 18 points behind, and there's 12 points of undecided. If the other candidate were to drop out, DeWine would be done. In fact, I got a call tonight from somebody who works with President Trump because they called somebody who's very close working with President Trump. And the individual called me and said, I said, call up that guy. He talks to President Trump all the time. Ask him what he thinks about the race. And he called back and told me that he was told that if Renacci was in this fight by himself, DeWine would be gone. But the biggest concern is the splitting of the vote. So it's a concern for me. It's a concern for President Trump. It's a concern for a lot of people. The answer is, who's qualified? Who has the message? Who has the campaign? Remember, a campaign is more than getting in a car and driving around and talking to 10 or 15 or 20 people a day. A campaign is about radio, TV, mailers, text messaging, getting people to know you. I have now been in this campaign since June. Here's what's interesting. I still only have about 72% name ID. Mike DeWine has 99% name ID. And we just learned the other day, or with our recent polling, that the other candidate has about 19% name ID. You can't win with 19% name ID. It's hard to win with 72% name ID, and it's hard to defeat somebody with 99% name ID. But Mike DeWine can be defeated if people realize that there is an opportunity here. We have candidates that are trying to remove Mike DeWine. And in the end, what we have to do is determine, are we looking for somebody that's so perfect that we walk away from removing DeWine? If you look at the candidates that are in the race now trying to defeat DeWine, many of our principles are the same. We don't believe in mass mandates. We don't believe in a lot of things that Governor DeWine has done. So in the end, you're right. There could be a split of the vote. The only thing I can hope for is that our surge continues. We keep moving up, which we are. DeWine keeps moving down, which he is, and the other candidates keep falling as well. If that's the case, splitting the vote won't matter. We have a sitting Republican governor who can't get more than 40% of the vote. I guarantee you that, which means 60% of Republicans do not want him to be reelected. My goal will be to get 41% or 42%, and hopefully the other candidate gets less than 18% and doesn't cause me to not defeat Governor DeWine.
Absolutely. And along back to the gun rights issue, which we know is very important, and DeWine has a very questionable record on that. He recently signed a constitutional carry bill, but Larry says that there's actually holes in that bill and that Ohioans would actually not be able to protect themselves in their own vehicles. I mean, I'd like to know if you would be willing to sign a new version of it, or just if you had any thoughts on this.
Well, look, I think we have to look at everything. Day one, Jim Renacci will look at all that stuff. This governor signed constitutional carry because he's in a primary and because he has a chance of losing. If you go back 2 years ago, he said he would never sign constitutional carry. If you go back 2 years ago, he said he would never sign stand your ground. He signed that too. If you go back 2 years ago, he also wanted red flag laws, and he wanted to pass one of the most anti-gun pieces of legislation in the history of Ohio. And because the legislature didn't allow him, he tried to get it in the 2020 budget. The answer is yes. We got to look at all ways to protect our Second Amendment. Jim Renacci, like I said earlier, will not only carry a gun as governor, but he will also protect that Second Amendment.
Absolutely. And back to education, which is a very important issue. They asked, Ohio Department of Education has made graduation requirements that don't align with trade job pathways. It's a college prep system. For example, Algebra 2 is a requirement. What will you do to align Ohio education requirements so that more students have more choice in what classes to take?
Well, I said that earlier, and I'll repeat it because I think it's important. What we have to do is set up our curriculum in high school so that we are educating our young adults to leave high school, either go to the military if they want, go to college with college prep courses, or go into the trades. We should have those three opportunities that actually work side by side in our high schools. Today, we are so dead set on getting everybody to go to college that we've lost our vision. We've lost the sight of the trees for the forest, and that's a real problem. You know, I'm going to give you another side story that's just horrible. As I was traveling the state in 2019 and 2020, long before some of these other candidates were saying they didn't like DeWine, I really didn't like what DeWine was doing either. And one of the things I was doing was I was going in to some of the facilities for individuals with drug addiction. And I'll never forget the 21-year-old who sat across the table from me. And I said to him, how did you get addicted to drugs? And here's what he said to me. He goes, Congressman, he said, when I was in high school, they tried to push algebra and trig on me. And I really just wanted to work with my hands. And I realized that I was going to be a failure if I stayed in that education system because I didn't want to do it. And my guidance counselor said, you're going to be a loser if you don't go to college, which that was painful to hear, because what he said he ended up doing was he saw it was easier to hang out with his friends who also agreed with him, did not want the trig classes and the algebra classes, but really wanted to use their hands, whether it was in trade school or whatever. And they started going down the path of drugs. And what's really heartbreaking is he told me that he got addicted and then he got married. His wife got pregnant. Now she's addicted. I mean, think of this transition that all started just because the individual in 10th or 11th grade couldn't see the opportunity for other things other than college. So those are the things we need to change, our education system. How do you do that? You put strong leaders. I would appoint strong leaders to the Department of Education who don't believe in CRT, social emotional learning, who don't believe in critical race theory, who believe that biological men should only compete in biological men's sports, but also who believe that we need to develop an education system that allows for pathways. Remember how I said this? We should look for the jobs of the future. If it's a welder, we should promote welding. If it's an appliance repairman, think about that. How many of you can't get your appliances repaired? That's a job of the future. You're going to be able to charge a lot of money to repair appliances. And I think those are some of the things that we need to redirect and let our young adults know when they're in high school, there are other opportunities, and then educate for those opportunities.
100%. And Deborah Mulholland, she'd like to know, will you find a pro-life doctor to run the Ohio Health Department? Of course, referencing how Governor DeWine appointed Amy Acton a abortion advocate.
Yeah, so number one requirement is any medical director has to be pro-life. I cannot have a pro-abortion medical director like Governor DeWine. By the way, Governor DeWine lost his life card. No matter what he says about being pro-life and how he passed the heartbeat or signed the heartbeat bill, that's all hogwash. You lose it when you employ a pro-abortion medical director. And by the way, that pro-abortional medical director relicensed the Dayton facility that had lost its license during the time they were shutting down small businesses and setting curfews and mask mandates and all that. She relicensed an abortion facility. Governor DeWine allowed abortion facilities to stay open. He said in a event that I was at, well, Renacci doesn't understand because, as soon as I would try and close the abortion facilities, the judge would have just ruled them to reopen. My response to that is, well, Governor DeWine, you were closing businesses, you were closing factories, you were closing small businesses, you were requiring mask mandates, all unconstitutional, and that didn't bother you. But you didn't want to take on the courts when it came to abortion facilities. Now, I'm going to appoint a pro-life medical director.
Absolutely, very important. And here is our last question. And feel free to add any additional closing thoughts at the end of that. And I want to remind everyone to please vote on May 3rd. It's very important that we all get out. But Jim, give us 3 things you will do in the first few weeks as governor.
Well, I've said day one, I'm going to ask for a bill on my desk, day one, to eliminate CRT, social emotional learning, and comprehensive sex education. I'm going to ask for a second bill on my desk related to education, which will be something similar to House Bill 61, which says biological men cannot compete in women's sports. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for all of our departments to look for at least a 15, first we're going to freeze spending, and then I'm going to ask them in the first 60 days to find 15% of cuts we can make across the board so we can start bringing our spending down. I think that's important. And third, look, I'm going to appoint what I call a protector of life to make sure that life is protected, and it is a key to the Renacci Knopp administration. Those are the first few things I'm going to do day one, but I would promise you, we got a long list of things that need to be changed in Ohio, from our tax system to other things, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure I'll add a few more, an executive order to make sure that no planes with illegal immigrants can land and stay. I'll sign that immediately as well. So those are a couple things that I'll do day one, but don't worry, we're going to make Ohio a DeSantis-like state, only we're going to call it a Renacci-like state. And DeSantis is going to be looking at Ohio saying, wait a minute, I got to start looking at what Renacci's doing. Look, in closing, I want to thank you. We spent an hour together tonight. This is a way for you to get some questions answered, which I've been answering as I travel the state. I mean, ask my wife. Sometimes I leave at 7:30 in the morning, don't get home until midnight. But we've been traveling the state, crisscrossing it, talking to people, and in the hope that people get to know who Jim Renacci is. And even though we've been doing that, there are still 20+% of the people who don't know who Jim Renacci is. So I'm asking you this tonight, please call your friends, text your friends, call your neighbors, talk to your neighbors. It's about making sure they know who the choices are. If they like Governor DeWine, they're probably going to stay with Governor DeWine as a Republican, but that's a small number. You know, there are some people in that 40% that really don't want to go with Governor DeWine, but they don't know who Jim Renacci is. We're starting to learn that. So we're picking off some of those people as well. So talk to them as well. But at the same time, here's what's important. The election's coming very soon. We know for a fact that if we consolidate the vote, Governor DeWine is gone. He will not be the governor at the end of this year, and he will not be the Republican nominee. But to do that, we got to come together, get behind the only team that can win. And I know that there are supporters of the other candidates who say that's just not true. It is true. We're going to find out next week that when you don't have the ability to run a campaign and the ability to have the vehicles like texting, like you've got to get your name out there. When you don't have that ability, you lose. It's what happened to me in 2018. It's what happened to me in 2018. I had 63% name ID and I lost. We got to make sure that Ohioans understand we have a time. I can't say this more. We have a chance to make history in Ohio and remove an incumbent Republican who runs the state like a Democrat. And if you get out there and vote, and you vote for Renacci Knopp, we can make a difference next week. So thank you for being with me tonight. I'm glad that we had this opportunity to talk, and look forward to seeing you over the next 5 days. Please, please, please get out and vote. Thank you.